We are excited to bring you part 2 of our Refresh Mental Health series. We've got great things in store. We had a wonderful feedback on our part 1 last week. You can find us every Wednesday here at 2 o'clock. My name is Mackenzie Tamayo, and I'm the COVID-19 Program Manager for the Small Business Development Center. And I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar if you're new to this series. We are also streaming live on Facebook, so if you have any questions during the series today, you're more than welcome to put those questions into the chat, and I'll be sure to fuel those to our individuals that we'll be sharing here today. So before we get started though, I'd like to introduce you to our organization, the Pikes Small Business Development Center. Our center, along with 1,000 other centers nationwide, we offer free consulting, practical training, and business resources to small businesses with help from the Small Business Administration. Our local corporate sponsors include El Paso County and Business Banking, the City of Colorado Springs, Park City Bank and Trust, Spectra Bank, Colorado Springs Utilities, and the Small Business Administration. The exciting news is that the Pikes Peak SBDC is a Region 8 SBA Innovation and Excellence winner for 2020, which places our office in the top 10 in the entire nation. After this webinar, if you are interested in meeting with a consultant with the SBDC, you're more than welcome to reach out to us at pikespeaksbdc.org, and we will hook you up with the right person for you. Today's webinar will be recorded, so if you'd like to get this recording, you can watch it on our Facebook, as well as reach out to anybody at the Pikes Peak SBDC, and we will give you a copy of this as well. We are happy to co-host this with Diversus Health, with the presenting sponsor of David Real Estate. We're able to provide this series for free from David Real Estate. He provides buying, selling, leasing, and advising for all of your commercial real estate needs. And you can find more information at davidcommercial.com. And I'll put that information in the chat as well. Today, I'd like to introduce you to our facilitators. Roberta Renfro is a licensed professional counselor and lead for the Colorado Spirit COVID response team at Diversus Health. Roberta is passionate about whole person, patient-centered healthcare and believes an integrated healthcare team provides the most comprehensive care. She has spent 10 years providing behavioral health care in primary and specialty care settings and managing a team of behavioral health care consultants. Prior to her work at Diversus Health, she provided trauma therapy and created group programs for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. We also have Michelle Fleming with us, who is a community outreach counselor on the Colorado Spirit team. In addition to working on this team, she works as a peer support specialist on the Ascent team at Diversus Health, a program designed to help teens and young adults with schizophrenia. She also has prior experience working at a recovery coach in Diversus Health substance use program. Michelle loves to use her life experience to relate with others and give them hope. And Roberta, you also helped us with our Bundle Up campaign that we did, filming as well. So, so wonderful to have you both here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up your slideshow, but while I'm doing so, Roberta, can you tell us a little bit about Diversus and the Colorado Spirit program, those types of things before we get started?
Sure, thanks. So Diversus Health was formerly known as Aspen Point. So I should just point that out because many people are familiar with Aspen Point, our behavioral health organization in Colorado Springs. And we underwent a new branding in February. So we're called Diversus Health. We have 4 main pillars of health care that we provide. We have crisis care, counseling, psychiatric programming, and we also have substance use disorder services. So the Colorado Spirit team is a team that was developed and Diversus Health received a grant for that last year. And it's basically designed to support the communities and individuals as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we began last summer. What we have been doing is reaching out to the community, and we've been providing support, trying to help build resilience, identify the supports that are already in place, and then just kind of build on that. So the model is based on the fact that we all have resiliency, and sometimes those skills and things that help shore us up under extra pressure and stress either fall by the wayside or just are no longer as enough to carry us through. So that's what we're here for. And our hope is to continue. We received an extension, so we will continue to be doing this through the end of the year. And toward the end of this presentation, I'll talk a little bit about what kinds of things we can help provide to anyone who's interested.
Wonderful. Thanks for that overview. And I've got it all up and running for you. So I'll let you all take it away. And again, if there's any questions, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat, and I'll be sure to relay those to both of you.
So you can click to the next one, and I believe Michelle will start out. We're talking about modeling self-care. I know last week, if some of you were here, we were talking about breaking the stigma.
Yeah, so this week we're going to be talking about self-care and the importance of both how it relates to productivity and job performance, and then also how we can model that in the workplace, because we know that, people look up to us, for tips and everything. And so we want to just really kind of talk about self-care and how it relates to the workplace. So we start off by saying, what is self-care? I think we've all heard this term before. We know, obviously, it has something to do with taking care of yourself. So according to the World Health Organization, self-care is what people do for themselves to establish and maintain health and to prevent and deal with illness. It is something that refuels us rather than takes from us. And it includes everything related to staying physically healthy, to include hygiene, nutrition, and seeking medical care as needed. So it's as simple as it sounds, many of us pay little attention to self-care. And this is why deliberately, is one of the most important words that we can use when we say self-care. You need to be conscious of your well-being before you can achieve true self-care. It starts from simple acts like not checking emails at night when you know it affects your sleep, and extends to more important decisions like going for a vacation or booking a massage when you feel you need one. So next slide. What self-care is not. And the first one we put on there was selfish. We often think that, when we are putting ourselves, before other people, it looks selfish, but it's along those lines of, putting the oxygen mask on yourself before putting it on somebody else, your child, because you need to be able to, you can't pour from an empty cup. So one example that I want to use is setting boundaries. If I had a coworker who was struggling in her personal life and she wanted to talk to me about it, of course I would want to help her, but I also need to be able to pay attention to my workload. And if she asked if we could speak outside of work hours, I would want to make sure I have time by myself to rest and refresh, do self-care, if especially if my battery is running low after work. And by paying attention to my own well-being first, I can be more attentive to my coworker and friend. Another example would be like if we're hangry, right? You're hungry and you're like, I got to eat something. All you can do is concentrate on eating, and then you can be able to attend to other things. So we can practice that self-care, which might sometimes look like putting our needs before others, without feeling guilty, because we want to be able to be there for other people. We want to attend to our jobs, but we need to kind of get rid of this idea that self-care is selfish. And it's also something that it's not something we force ourselves to do or something that we don't enjoy doing. And while taking care of basic needs such as eating healthy foods and exercising are important, it's also good to take part in other activities that you genuinely enjoy doing. And for some people, taking a walk might look like a chore, something you're like, oh, I have to do this for exercise. But for other people, it's a really good way to de-stress after a day's work. So try to pick activities that make you feel refreshed and create an overall sense of well-being, something that you're more likely to continue doing. It is going to be helpful. And then also self-care isn't burning yourself out. There's this perspective out there that in order to be successful, you have to overwork yourself. It's almost a thing that is idealized. We look at others who get up early, go to bed late, who are always working, and we think to ourselves, that's what we need to do to succeed and achieve our goals. But overworking ourselves is incredibly counterintuitive. If we overwork ourselves without pausing to breathe, eat, sleep, and rest, we're going to experience burnout, which will ultimately lead to less productivity. Next slide. So, poor self care, right? If we're not taking part in these activities that are refreshing ourselves physically and mentally, we can experience decreased physical and mental health. Um, and so, over time, if we're not um, paying attention to our physical and mental health, we're not pouring into ourselves in this way and helping ourselves, ultimately, it's going to lead to decreased productivity. Not enough sleep, poor nutrition, lack of exercise will leave us feeling low on energy and not as able to concentrate on our workloads. We might end up, overbooking ourselves because we aren't paying attention to when we're needing to step away from work. And then all of these things will lead to job fatigue. A job that was once enjoyable can become exhausting if we aren't taking care of ourselves in healthy ways. We might start placing blame in the wrong places, thinking our job suddenly sucks, when in reality, if we were practicing healthy self-care, we'd have more of that energy and focus to tackle our work days. It's not the job itself, just our lack of ability to be fully engaged, that is the real issue. And there was a time when I wasn't paying attention to when I needed to step away from work and take time off. And I almost was like, oh man, I'm working so hard. I don't need a sick day. Like everything is good. And then eventually I started getting really exhausted. And this led to me needing to take more and more time off. And one day my boss sat down with me and helped me realize that if I regularly schedule a day off, it would actually prevent this burnout that I've been experiencing. Therefore, I wouldn't need to take as many sick days. And that's not only beneficial for the employee, but also for the employer, who won't need to have their employee gone as often. So if we're taking care of ourselves, encouraging that healthy self-care in the workplace, then we're going to see, increased productivity and people being more engaged in their workday. Next slide. So how to practice your own self-care. So I've kind of briefly mentioned, some things, but we want to live healthy. We want to eat healthy food, stay hydrated, get enough rest, regular exercise, and avoid drugs. We kind of see that if we're not paying attention to what we're truly needing, right? If we're not filling ourselves with healthy food, then we're going to turn to unhealthy things, right? Like excessive drinking, um, smoking, overeating, whatever that unhealthy thing will look like for you. Um, and then part of good self-care, it goes beyond just taking care of yourself physically. It's also staying connected with family and friends, building that sense of belonging. It's important to have that community. I know for me, I love being able to step away from work, go hang out with friends, just kind of like leave my work day, at the door and just go, play games, board games, be there for other people, talk, laugh. Um, Practicing good hygiene and sleep hygiene. We all know what the word hygiene means. A lot of people are unfamiliar with what sleep hygiene actually means. So we're going to get into that. So next slide. So sleep is very crucial to everything that we're going to be doing during the day. If we're sleep deprived, like we're not going to be able to concentrate, we're kind of going to be in that mindset, we might like be short tempered. So making sure that we're getting that rest It balances and restores energy. You know what it feels like when you get out of bed and you're like, man, that was a good night's rest, and you're able to just like tackle your day. It improves emotional regulation, kind of just like eating regularly throughout the day can kind of help you not have those like dips in energy. This will improve that. You won't, experience so much like ups and downs. Faster information processing. When we're well rested, we're going to be able to retain information, better learning, memory function, and REM sleep is where we dream. That's rapid eye movement sleep. It's where we're able to process the day. We're able to process all the information that we got during the day. And actually, interestingly enough, we pick up so much information throughout our days. Like you were to go to a restaurant with a friend and you're having this conversation, you're actually picking up on a lot of, external conversations, and you might not be conscious of that, but if you're ever just like, where did this dream come from, you might be able to explain it from that. But that's your brain's way of just kind of like processing, moving forward, and then kind of putting things into long-term memory. Really cool stuff. So you got to be able to sleep in order for your brain to just kind of process and everything. So next slide. So sleep hygiene is what you're able to do to help yourself get that sleep. A lot of people have trouble sleeping these days. It's very hard to help us, like, it's hard to wind down at night. And so sleep hygiene is kind of these behaviors that we're going to do to help ourselves get really good sleep. And one of the things that people say all the time is go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. Whatever that looks like, if depending on how many hours of sleep, I think they say somewhere between like 7.5, 9 hours. I'm not sure. There's that 8 hour out there, but everybody like has their specific hours that works really well for them. So whatever you can do, like set that schedule, because that will like just kind of maintain that balance. Keep your bedroom cold and dark. I was having a lot of trouble sleeping, and so I invested in some blackout curtains, and my sleep has improved. I'm not waking up so much during the night because it's dark. If you need a fan to make it cool, get a fan. Of course, have comfortable bedding. That's going to be helpful, and make sure that you're keeping your sheets clean, everything. We all want to be able to have a bed that we can sink into it. No screens for at least 1 hour before bed. That one's really difficult because it's like, sometimes we might be reading an ebook or something, or I know I like to play solitaire on my phone before I go to bed, but it can disrupt our sleep from the blue light. So being able to shut that off 1 hour before bed kind of tells your brain like, hey, it's, we're starting to get sleepy now. And avoiding taking naps during the day. That's really hard. If you're really struggling with sleeping at night, then your body's like, oh gosh, I'm going to go take a nap during the middle of the day because duh, I need sleep. But this is going to be training your body to start sleeping during the day instead of at night. So even if you've had a lack of sleep the night before, do your best not to take a nap because you need to regulate your sleep schedule again. And only use your bedroom for bedroom activities. That is difficult for a lot of people. A lot of people have a TV in their bedroom. You might bring a book in there, you might bring your phone, your computer, but basically keep your bedroom for when you're sleeping, sex, if you're sick, like basically just anything. Like if you're wanting to read a book, go read a book like on your couch if you can, get sleepy and then go to bed, because when you're in your bed, then your brain's like, oh, this is where we sleep, And so these are all some really good tips on sleep hygiene. Maybe there's some things that you can start incorporating. Sleep is just, we started out with that one because that one, it's a really good foundation for all the rest of the things that we'll be talking about. So that is where I will.
I love what you said, Michelle, too, about using your room just for sleep, because I think especially people who struggle with like anxiety and like wake up in the middle of the night, I think I learned early on that like if you wake up in the middle of the night to not like toss and turn, to like remove yourself again from like your room and like go read for a while in a different room until you get sleepy and then come back. Because I think, you know, our brains can attach, you know, to the bedroom to like even anxiety too. So I have found that that's really helpful, not even going to bed, but like if I wake up in the middle of the night to just say like, I'm going to toss and turn for more than 5 minutes, I'm just going to get up, do something like a quiet activity that I know that can kind of wind my mind down. So, but we just kind of overlook, I think we all know that we're supposed to take care of our sleep, but I think the practical nature of how we do that, I think is really important. So thanks for touching on that.
Yeah. So I'm going to let Roberta do the next one.
So we're going to talk a little bit about just how to put some of the self-care into practice. I know sometimes it sounds easy. It's kind of like Mackenzie said, we know we need to have good sleep, but doing it and having consistency is another story. So how do you practice your own self-care? And again, we want to emphasize not only the benefit to you, but the benefit for you modeling self-care for your staff. That's really critical in terms of how your employees will perceive the importance of it. What you value, they will take to heart. So do something that you enjoy on a daily basis. Doesn't have to take a lot of time. I know sometimes when we think of these things, it's like, oh my gosh, another to do on my list. I can't do that. I have to, you know, there's not enough time in the workday for those things. But you can pick something out, and maybe some days you have more time for something that is a little more time consuming than others. So that's why it's important to have a list, have kind of a lot of different things that you can pick from so that it does work into your routine on a given day. So some examples might be dancing, might be gardening or painting. It might be taking the time to read. Maybe if you like to read for pleasure, you have a chance to just knock out a few pages over a lunch hour, something that helps take you away from just what's going on in the moment. Could be a new hobby that you might want to try. I think the important thing is to be intentional about it. I think that's kind of the key to creating something new anyway. It's being intentional. I'm going to do these things. It's just a matter of when do I do it, how long, what time frame do I have? So think about creating that list of things you might want to do. Relax. Find ways to relax that work for you. So it could be, you know, taking a bath, or, you know, bubble baths, massages, taking a walk, playing with pets, taking the pet on a walk, anything that you can think of that's relaxing to you. And again, that's going to be a little bit individualized. Some people, you know, to some people, maybe one thing is more relaxing than another. So think about what might be on your list. And, you know, I think too, I would encourage you, if you're having a little bit of a hard time thinking about how you can carve out something to do in the future, think about what you might have done in the past. What things, if you look back and think about a time when you may have felt relaxed, or when you may have felt like you were in a good place with balance and you were doing some things. What were those things that you did? How did that seem to work well for you? I kind of had an aha moment myself when I was thinking about this, and it just dawned on me. I thought, you know, I was doing this, but I wasn't really intentionally doing this when I was in college. So when I first started college out of high school and I was signing up for the classes that I wanted, I specifically, intentionally, I guess I was being intentional, I intentionally decided that I was going to have a class each semester that was interesting or new or fun or something that I thought was just, you know, something that was going to be enjoyable, not something that was a have to, but something that was a want to. And so one time I signed up for golf because I had not golfed before. Another time I did gymnastics. Another time I did fencing, just things that were just, you know, different. And it was intentional that I did that. And I know that it made it seem more like a fun experience and an overall enjoyable experience. And in the day-to-day of going to classes, it just kind of gave me a nice break amongst some of the other didactic learning. So if you think back, sometimes you might surprise yourself at when you were intentional and when you were doing things that you may not have known were being, you know, were really practicing good self-care, but yet you were. So think about that as you're moving forward and maybe trying to create some new things. Next slide. So relaxation techniques, we're talking about, on the previous slide, we were talking about being able to de-stress and how to relax and finding things that were relaxing to you. I think of this list as examples and certainly not comprehensive, but I think when you look at it, I think it's easy sometimes to maybe dismiss a few things or, you know, check that box. Okay, I've tried that. I've done that. And you might think about it in the sense of, if you haven't tried something on that list, think about trying everything. It may be that you find something that might surprise you is helpful and relaxing to you. You may not totally understand what it is until you really delve into it, until you really give it a try. For example, the deep breathing. I'm going to pick that one out because a lot of times when we talk about deep breathing, unless you really have put it into a practice, sometimes it's a little bit easy to dismiss because breathing is a part of everyday living. So deep breathing really has a good foundation in terms of health and healing. Incorporating breathing really has an impact on treating anxiety. So for stress management, or if you have a tendency or prone to being anxious, it's a way to really help take back control for yourself over what's going on with your body. A lot of what is going on for people is what's going on in terms of how we think and in terms of what our body's physiologic response is to what our brain is telling us. So that's a little bit about like what Mackenzie was talking about with sleep. If we're lying there and we are watching the clock, we have a lot on our mind, we're not getting to sleep, and 10 minutes go by and we're still watching the clock, what we may be telling ourselves in our brain is, I'm going to be so tired if I don't go to sleep right now. And the more we tell ourselves that, the less we're going to be inclined to sleep because the more anxious our body's going to feel. So it's kind of breaking up that back and forth between the brain and the body. And deep breathing, if you really do it, by taking that deep cleansing breath, can really do those things. So it can really work some wonders. So I want to encourage people to think about incorporating that because it's easy. It's easy to incorporate. You don't have, it doesn't require money. It doesn't require a tool. It doesn't require exercise equipment. So think about those things. And if you haven't deeply explored them, think about doing that. Take that intentional response or being intentional that I just talked about a little earlier. Take that and apply it to this list. Progressive muscle relaxation is a way to go through the muscles through your body from head to toe. And the idea is that you intentionally tense a muscle group. and hold that tension for a certain amount of time, and then you relax that. And that creates a really overall relaxed state. So visualization, yoga, journaling. A lot of people like to journal. Putting down what you're experiencing, thinking, what your thoughts are, what your feelings are. Those are really good ways to be able to kind of release sometimes things that you might be hanging on to. If you can put it on paper, sometimes that's very cathartic, and it's also relaxing to just kind of release and put those things down. Music and art are huge ways to relax. Listening to the kind of music you like, appreciating art. A lot of times just doing art yourself or crafts, being crafty. It's a way to just be and not have to perform, not have to focus necessarily other than just enjoying and doing what you like to do. Next slide, please. Thanks. So mindfulness, I want to throw that out there because while we're trying to be intentional and come up with ideas and things that we may like to do moving forward or explore in terms of self-care or think back on what we've done in the past, what we want to do is be mindful of the things that we're trying to add to our plate. So if we're mindful, it basically means that we're right there in the moment. If I'm choosing to do some deep breathing, I'm going to focus on the deep breathing, and I'm not going to focus on thoughts that might pop into my mind of stressors of the day or things that I need to do tomorrow. I want to make sure I'm going to focus on what I am doing in the moment. And if I'm doing yoga, I'm focusing on that. So mindfulness is just paying attention and being in that moment. I think of mindful eating. Mindful eating is basically thinking about the food. How does it taste? Is it satisfying? Are you getting full? Are you paying attention to whether you're getting full, or are you just consuming? Are you in the car and eating so that the focus is not really on the food and being mindful about eating, but just watching the traffic and balancing the food and, you know, all those things that go into place as far as distraction. So mindfulness is paying attention to what you're doing. Like it says, being instead of doing. Decreases reactivity. And some of the other benefits of doing your activities in a mindful way is it improves compassion. It improves compassion for self and for others. It improves relationship, because if you're having a conversation with someone, they can tell if you're paying attention or not paying attention. If I'm distracted, I'm not mindful about the conversation, it doesn't help the relationship because it feels like I'm not really engaged. Improves focus. So being mindful is a really, really good skill to practice and incorporate into the things that we do on a daily basis. Next slide, please. So wanted to just kind of throw it out there and see what some of your favorite self-care activities might be. If you want to put it in the chat, if you have a way of communicating that, Mackenzie will be able to see that. But what some favorite self-care activities might be, things that maybe we didn't even talk about or cover.
While people are putting that in the chat, I always thought self-care was a lot of like massages and bath time and those types of things. But self-care is also like filing your taxes. It's also like putting away, like having a clean desk, picking up things, putting away the laundry. And it sounds so silly to say, but I have found that like so much of my anxiety or my, antsiness will come because I'll avoid something. And so I think sometimes self-care can just be like completing the task, like seeing what needs to get done and just finishing it. Just saying like, I'm going to spend 10 minutes. It's not that hard and I'll finish it. And there's such a relief that happens when you have those types of things. So I see. But I just think sometimes like it can come across as like, just it is so much like taking care of yourself in a way that's pampering, but sometimes pampering can also look like very thoughtful, mindful, like you said, intentional things, right? That, maybe are difficult, that are not so much easy, but when you get to the other side of it, you're really grateful for it. So
I like to keep my kitchen clean. It brings about a lot of peace. But if I like allow dishes to kind of pile up, or I'm not like throwing things away, then I actually start to notice that my mental health starts declining a little bit. Like there is evidence supporting having a clean environment and it improving your mental health. Like,
yeah,
it's amazing how much our environment. So yeah, it isn't just, those stereotypical things that you mentioned, massages and stuff like that, but it's also, engaging and taking care of yourself, period. I think one of my favorite things right now is taking a walk. I live right next to a very good hiking place. I just after work every single day, I go out and I take about a 20 to 30-minute walk. And I'll even do it in the rain. It was raining last night and I still went on a walk because it's so enjoyable and it's exercise. It's getting out there in nature. So, it's kind of like, it's finding those, I think it's like finding a balance of something that, like that's exercise, right? But I found it in a way that's enjoyable. Plus it has to do with my spirituality and stuff like that. But really kind of going back to what I talked about earlier about finding something that you can do and you will do.
yes. And somebody said too, especially after COVID, connecting to other people. So taking time to socialize. I think that's huge, especially in this kind of continuity and resiliency that we're feeling post-pandemic is, isolation, we all know, breeds all sorts of not great things in us. And so just taking the time to be intentional to reach out. Someone else said, waking up 30 minutes early for time for myself, which I think is great too. I think there's probably studies around, rushing in the morning and just starting your day in a very intentional, like, I'm going to take this like 30 minutes, maybe before, if you have kids, before the kids get up, just say like, this is me time. So I feel like I'm connected to myself and the world and I'm ready to take things on. A lot of comments about like exercising, I think is one of those ones that isn't always luxurious, but we're always grateful when it's over with. So,
yeah, I agree. And exercise can look like a lot of different things too. So it doesn't have to have that connotation of, getting ready for a marathon. It can simply be a small goal of walking to the end of the drive, a long drive to the mailbox, and making sure you do that every day. Or it could be, if you're still working remotely, making sure you are standing up and getting up out of the Zoom chair every hour and, taking a 5-minute break and moving yourself around. So it could be small things.
Yeah, that's great. So those are the ones that people had mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. So, ready for the next slide. I think Michelle's going to start with that.
Yeah, so this just says employers who want healthy, environmentally safe, energetic, and clean workspaces need to encourage, model, and practice self-care. So we have talked about different self-care ideas, their benefits, how it relates to productivity and performance in the workplace. And so I kind of want to jump into some tips for employers specifically to help with your own personal self-care as it relates to your employees, and things that you can be doing just to kind of take care of yourself and so that you can start to model these things. So practicing self-awareness. This is probably one of the greatest life tips, period in anybody's life, is becoming self-aware. I think that a lot of times we do things without thinking. We sometimes don't think about how we're coming across, or we didn't communicate something in a way that we intended. And so this is becoming aware of your feelings and what they're teaching you. You can do this by keeping a journal. Like we talked about, a journal is a really great way to track your emotions, look at your thoughts, kind of be your own feedback. It's needing to look at yourself through others' eyes. Like I said, sometimes we can come across a certain way that we're not intending. And so this is also about learning your strengths and weaknesses. What are you doing well? Congratulate yourself on those things and keep doing those things. And what also could be improved. We all have room for improvement. And again, being mindful how you present yourself to others. Welcome alternate viewpoints by being open to new ideas. It's kind of having a little bit of humility and being open to feedback. And be sure to follow your values, not only in what you say, but what you do. It's kind of that concept of, if you're a parent, right, and you're telling your child, like, do this, but then you go do the opposite. It's like, what kind of example are you setting? You need to be able to follow through and actually show. And that's kind of the whole point of, this and what we're talking about is, if you're recognizing, hey, these are the benefits of what self-care can do for the workplace, but you're not modeling it yourself, then it's just kind of like, why would we kind of, if they're able to see, in other words, I think what I'm trying to say is, if you're able to show, like, hey, this is what happens when I get good sleep, this is what happens when I'm practicing this self-care, and they see you thriving, then that's going to make them go, like, I know that there's people I've worked with where I'm like, what are you doing outside of work? Because you're always so happy, or you're always present, you're always here. And I'm like, what? I want to do what they're doing. So yeah, practicing self-awareness. And then the next one is setting boundaries. This one, setting boundaries can be very difficult in every area of life. But knowing your limits so you can set your boundaries at work, kind of that example that I gave earlier of, I want to be able to help people, right? That's in my nature. But if I have a coworker who's like, hey, I need to talk to you about this, but I have stuff going on, I need to be able to say, like, hey, I can talk to you at 3 p.m. But right now, like, I can't because I got to focus on this. You be direct in stating your boundaries to avoid confusion. If it's just like a no, then it's like, what is this? But being able to be clear, so that way there's not room for interpretation. Seek support through workplace mental health resources, or tap into private resources to help you set boundaries at work. There's a lot of resources out there of how to get that support. And then creating a schedule that suits your preferences to keep things normal as much as possible, even when operating under crisis conditions. We want to be able to maintain, and I always talk about, there's like external boundaries and there's internal boundaries. You want to be able to kind of keep things regular and kind of ordered in that way. So that's what I got for that. The next slide is, I think that's Roberta.
Yes, it is. Thank you. So some of the things that you might be able to do to support and promote the sense of well-being and wellness among your employees and in your workplace settings. You might be able to provide water. So there may be, I know it depending on the type of business that you have, I know sometimes there are things in place for maybe your customers or clients where you have a small refrigerator, you have some water for them. So you may think about some of the things you can do in the same way for employees. If you're able to do that, provide breaks during meetings, breaks might be just, it might just be being intentional or mindful about how long a meeting is. I know a lot of times the length of the meeting, if it goes too long, people lose it, can't pay attention or lose focus. But if it does seem to become a long meeting, think about taking some breaks or having some snacks or some things for those meetings. You might think about hosting some activities for your staff. It could be biking to work. It could be something that you do on a given week. So it might be using other ways for, spending the lunch break. Might be offering, having a book club, and maybe over lunch once a week, the book club gets together and talks about a book. It could be having a company activity that you do, a picnic or a barbecue, depending on what you have in your availability in terms of the way your work is laid out. But I know a lot of times during the summer, someone might come and bring one of their barbecue grills. If there's a patio, that you might be able to host a small barbecue, provide healthy food options or healthy snacks. If you have like vending machines, you might think about what are in the vending machines, and you might make sure that there are nice things that are promoting healthy eating and healthy snacking. And you might try to create some partnerships with some wellness businesses. If you haven't done so already, you might explore some of the things that might be near your area. So look around you. You may have a yoga studio down the street. There might be some other health centers. There may be, there may be a community garden nearby, and maybe there's a way that some of the staff members could go over there on their lunch hour and participate in that community garden. Just kind of think creatively, think outside the box, and maybe get your staff to start thinking of some things. Next slide, please. So what I'm suggesting is fostering some creative solutions, and you could maybe think of doing something like having some friendly competitions among your staff when it comes to a healthcare initiative. I know in some areas, some places we've done things, there have been things like maintain, don't gain during the holiday times, and you may develop teams. We have done this before at our company, where holiday time from Thanksgiving through Christmas, people have a choice, and they might want to sign up for the Maintain Don't Gain initiative, where you have weekly weigh-ins, you develop teams, you do this as a group to see what team might not, either lose weight or maintain at the same weight by the end of the holidays. So there are some things you can think of that not everybody's going to necessarily get behind or want to do, but if you have enough of these things, you're going to interest pretty much everyone at some point. Creating some kind of no cost or low cost initiatives that look like, for example, this self-care bingo. So if you think of it, I found this self-care bingo where you could have your employees take a look at this and check this off, and at the end of the week, whoever has the most on their card filled might get, a Starbucks card or something like that. There may be some little things that you can do, and this kind of creativity really makes things interesting for staff, and it's keeping them active and interested and in taking care of themselves, but it's also making it interesting for them. You could also appoint maybe a wellness champion or a wellness team, depending on the size of your staff. And that always helps, because the burden is not just on you to come up with everything and think of all the creative ideas, but someone else among their peers that is interested in coming up with some of these ideas that can help support you in supporting your staff. Next, please. What are some of the changes that you would like to maybe implement in your place to encourage healthy self-care. So that's something that you might think of in terms of some of the things that we've talked about. And it could also be that you might want to share something that you have been doing that's really worked and that you're excited to share about.
While people are doing that, I think there's something really great about normalizing just expressing what you need from a workplace. So I think it goes back kind of foundationally to the roots, right? Where you create a safe space where people feel like they can say, this would be really helpful if we did this. Like, and even if that's maybe anonymous at first, or, but just at least opening up the discussion to know that people are allowed to say, I don't really like the way this is being handled, or I wish we had, like you said, better, healthier options at work. I wish, you allowed us, 30 minutes to just go outside or just take breaks, or kind of vocalize some of those things. So I think putting it back on the employees can be really powerful as an employer. Instead of saying, I'm going to implement, say, we're thinking about doing these 5 things. Out of these 5 things, what are your favorite 3? Just like kind of putting the control back. I think even that alone creates such a great, bond between employee and employer, and that they have a sense that, you don't care just about my productivity, but my overall holistic health, because I like to say that behind every business are people, and people need holistic health. So, and if you're spending 8 hours of your day there, that's a big chunk. So anyway, so that's just some of my thoughts. I'll look to see here if there's any other comments.
That's a great point. I think anytime you can be inclusive, it's going to be received better, more. If you think about our human nature, behavior is such that we always seem to like the things that we choose to do rather than the things that are forced on us, or it could even be the same thing, but it feels so much better if we're deciding that we want to do it versus someone telling us this is what you need to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can keep going if you want to.
Yes.
Awesome.
Sure. So, but some of the benefits, if you think about some of these initiatives, and Michelle talked a little bit about it, but it truly does help reduce turnover rate. If you can keep employees engaged and wanting to do things and being engaged in the work and feeling good, not being burnt out, or not misplacing their own burnout on the work or the job itself, you're going to have lower turnover rate. And that always turns into more dollars, because it does cost a lot of money to retrain staff. There have been a lot of studies that have supported the amount of money that it takes to train staff. So less burnout in the staff, they're going to be happier. They're going to be more pleasant to be around, and they're going to be more pleasant with each other. Lowering of healthcare costs. If you have healthcare insurance that you're providing for your staff, that when it comes up to every year taking a look at the premiums and the costs as they increase, the more you're able to have things in place and keep your staff healthy and using healthcare less or more appropriately, your rates are going to stay down. And that means the cost of your coverage for them is going to be down. Improved focus and productivity. They're going to be more mindful, more present, and able to do a better job when they are working and being more productive if they do have the appropriate breaks and the appropriate means for self-care. And then building better, stronger teamwork, which is better customer service. So it's going to relate to how they relate to each other. It's also going to benefit how they relate to the customer, to the clients. So think about some of these things when you're trying to weigh benefits and risk in implementing programs. Next slide. So one thing I wanted to kind of leave with everyone is the idea of some of the things that the Colorado Spirit team might be able to help support you in doing. So if you like some of the things we've talked about, self-care is just one of the topics that we have created presentations and been able to help provide and support businesses and other entities in the community. And this is just an example. We have individualized topics. We can provide in-person or virtual, and it's no cost to you or your staff. We are able to talk about things. If you want to go ahead and move to the next slide, Mackenzie. Some of the topics that we've done are mindfulness and gratitude, empathy, hope, bouncing forward, everyday creativity, acceptance, non-judgmental thinking, courage, and communication, and mind-body connection series, which is looking at mindful health, mindful eating, mindful sleep, and things like that. So what we try to incorporate in those series and the presentations is maybe a mindfulness activity that we go through at the beginning. We talk about some of the psychoeducational pieces that we've talked about like today, and then maybe some practical skills for getting those in place. So if that's something that could be helpful to you as you're trying to help provide some resilience and some support to your staff, please know that you can take advantage of that and reach out to the Colorado Spirit team, and we'll be happy to tailor it to fit your needs. I can give an example where we had provided one of these, and one of the businesses said, you know, we don't have a lot of time, but we do have a lot of need. What do you think about just providing a break for us once a week on a Tuesday? And it lasts about 10 minutes. It's like a 10-15 minute break. And it's called Take a Break with Haley. One of the persons on our team just does a virtual thing with them and leads them through maybe a visualization or activity. And I had one of them tell me, you know, that was so helpful to me. And between the frantic phone calls that I'm fielding all afternoon, just to know I had that 10 minutes to just decompress is so helpful. So it could be a profound benefit, and for not a lot of investment on your part. So think about those things, and we're happy to talk to you about them at any time. And I think that's it. Yes.
Awesome. That's great. I think that's a really great resource, Roberta. I love the idea of just taking 10-15 minutes to just take a break. You know, if you know that you have something, especially like, let me just get me through, you know, the next couple of hours, and I know that I'll be able to take a break, I think is so critical, especially as we are now integrating back from, you know, being at home. Now we're kind of maybe hybrid or back into the office, which can create a lot of new anxiety and nuance. As businesses kind of getting back into a groove with new best practices that are coming through. So if people want more information, how can they get more information on that?
So so on that second to last slide is one of our flyers, and I don't remember if you have the flyer from last week, but we can provide that flyer. But it's in this, if they have the presentation. It's our number, which is area code 719-266-2966. Help me, Michelle, make sure I have the number right.
Hold on a second. Let's see.
And we also have a way for you to contact our team through the website at Diversus Health. So you're able to contact the COVID team. You're also able to email the team, and it's COVID response at diversushealth.org. So we have either our email 299-2996.
Great.
Yeah. So
Perfect. That's great, because I think especially kind of moving forward, I know a lot of people are now doing hybrid or back. June 1st was a big one for everybody. So kind of this month will be very, important as people are kind of getting into new grooves and childcare again, and kind of what all of that looks like is super critical. So thank you for all that fantastic information. And then we've got, like I mentioned earlier, we do have part 3 that's going to come in a couple of weeks. We have Small Business Week next week. So we're going to go like crazy next week, but then we'll come back and continue on this series. So thank you so much for your incredible information and holistic approach to business wellness in a post-COVID world that we're all just trying to navigate. But anything we can do to just kind of really encourage people to see, again, like I said, that there's people behind businesses is really important. So, so thank you, Roberta and Michelle, for being here. I really appreciate it. And like I mentioned earlier, if anybody has any need for free consulting or practical training, they can reach out to the SBDC at Pikes Peak SBDC.org. And then we have your information as well. And if you'd like a recording of this, we can provide that as well. So thank you both so much for all this great information. And we look forward to talking to you soon.
We'll look forward to next.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Take care.